transverse myelitis is the inflammation, demyelination of the axons in the spinal cord. So what could be the causes leading to this? We can divide the causes into three parts: post-infectious, autoimmune, and idiopathic. So, post-infectious. Antibodies produced to a certain infection go and attack your axons and cause demyelination of the axons. There is post-infectious. So, what particular infections lead to transverse myelitis? Dengue, herpes, Mycoplasma pneumoniae, and schistosomiasis. These are the particular infections that lead to transverse myelitis. What is autoimmune? Transverse myelitis that occurs in the presence of or due to other autoimmune diseases. So which are those autoimmune diseases? Multiple sclerosis and an entity which is very common in children, acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, ADEM, and idiopathic, the cause of which we don't know. So these are the causes of transverse myelitis. What is the pathophysiology? The exact pathophysiology is not known, but the T cells have a T cell receptor. This T cell receptor recognizes it goes and binds to the oligodendrocyte and recognizes the protein on the oligodendrocytes. And this toll-like receptor interacts with that protein, myelin binding protein on the oligodendrocyte. This interaction leads to a release of certain cytokines like IL-1, IL-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and interferon gamma. IL-1, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha will lead to vasodilatation, diapedesis. Vasodilatation will basically increase the blood flow, will increase the cell adhesion molecules by which the neutrophils will adhere to the endothelium of the blood vessel, and it will increase the capillary permeability and will lead to diapedesis. The T cells moving out from the blood vessel and reaching the site of inflammation. These T cells will also stimulate the B lymphocytes. The T lymphocytes will stimulate the B lymphocytes. What will the B lymphocytes do? The B lymphocytes will get converted into plasma cells, which will produce antibodies. These antibodies will go and interact, IgG antibodies. Total IgG production will increase and it will go and interact with the oligodendrocytes. And the interferon gamma will stimulate the macrophages within the blood vessels. These macrophages, once they cross the blood-brain barrier, they cross the blood vessel and come out, they will recognize the oligodendrocytes which the antibodies have bound to. They will see the opsonized oligodendrocytes and will attack the oligodendrocytes, causing phagocytosis and destruction of the axon. That's the basic pathophysiology. We don't know the exact mechanism behind it, but we assume that it is because of molecular mimicry. Now let's see the clinical features. The most common site of occurrence of transverse myelitis is the thoracic spine. Alright, that's the most common site of occurrence of transverse myelitis, the thoracic spine. Now, as we all know, the preganglionic motor sympathetic ganglions, the sympathetic nervous system, is present in the thoracolumbar region from T1 to L2 or L3. Right? So, if there is a demyelination occurring in this area, your sympathetic nervous system gets affected. And how does it get affected? This sympathetic nervous system supplies the GIT, that is the internal anal sphincter, and it supplies the bladder, the urethral sphincter. Since both of them get affected, both of them may not contract at the right time, it will lead to fecal and urinary incontinence. And if the sacral spinal cord is affected or sacral spinal cord undergoes demyelination, it can also lead to retention of urine because it will lead to an improper contraction of the bladder. The detrusor muscle will get affected and it will lead to urinary retention. So, it can either lead to urinary incontinence or retention depending upon which part of the spinal cord gets involved, or it can lead to fecal incontinence. What other things? What are the other clinical features? Now your spinal cord has gotten affected, right? If your dorsal column gets demyelinated, what are the dorsal column sensations that you will lose? You will lose your 2-point discrimination, proprioception, and vibration. Right? Next, this is the lateral corticospinal tract. If there is a lesion in the lateral corticospinal tract, what kind of clinical features you will get? You will get an upper motor neuron lesion type of clinical features, which will include weakness, which is a spastic weakness, right? Upper motor neuron lesions, so spastic weakness, increase in the tone, exaggerated deep tendon reflexes, and a positive Babinski sign. What happens when your spinothalamic tract gets involved? When your anterior spinothalamic tract gets involved, you will have a decrease in the crude touch and pressure. When your lateral spinothalamic tract gets involved, you will have a decrease in the pain and temperature. Your spinocerebellar tracts also can get involved. Your spinocerebellar tracts are responsible for sending proprioception signals from your spinal cord to your cerebellum, hence maintaining a balance. So destruction of the spinocerebellar tracts will lead to ataxia. Sometimes what could happen is your anterior horn cells of your spinal cord get involved. If your anterior horn cells get involved, you would have a element type of lesion. So element features would come like weakness, which would be a flaccid type of weakness, a decrease in the tone, absent deep tendon reflexes, and possibly sometimes fasciculations. So those were the clinical features. Now let's see the diagnosis. When a patient with such above clinical features presents to you, what would be your first line investigation that you would do? The first line of investigation that you would do is the MRI of the spinal cord with or without contrast. Like I said, the most common site of occurrence of transverse myelitis is the thoracic spinal cord, but it could occur anywhere along the spinal cord. And what would you see on an MRI? On a T1 image, you would see a hypointense lesion. Hypointense on T1. T2, you will see an hyperintense lesion. And with contrast, you can see hyperintensities with acute lesions. What else can you do? You can also do a lumbar puncture. Analysis of the CSF fluid will show you pleocytosis. Like we saw in the pathophysiology, because of the cytokines that are released, all your macrophages, neutrophils, B cells, T cells, lymphocytes have all migrated to the site of inflammation. So there will be an increase in the number of cells in the cerebrospinal fluid. There will be a pleocytosis. So you would want to do an MRI. Hypointense in T1, hyperintense in T2. And you would want to do a CSF that shows you pleocytosis. Now let's see the treatment. So acute treatment, when the patient presents to you with such symptoms and you diagnose the patient as transverse myelitis, like you know, there is a lot of inflammation, lot of cytokine release, which has led to all the destruction of the axons. So to suppress the inflammation, to suppress the ongoing process, the first line of treatment would be a high dose corticosteroid. What we call as a pulse steroid therapy. Right? Usually 1 gram of methylprednisolone is given for a period of 1 to 5 days. If the high dose corticosteroid therapy fails, you could do something called as plasmapheresis. Plasmapheresis basically removes the antibodies from your plasma and replaces the good plasma back. So acute prevention, high dose corticosteroids or plasmapheresis. What would you want to do when you know a patient is predisposed to transverse myelitis? How would you want to prevent it? Like we've seen, it is a inflammatory process. So you would try to, an antibody is attacking the oligodendrocytes. So you would want to give a immunosuppressant. So for prevention, you would want to give a immunosuppressant, mycophenolate mofetil. Mycophenolate mofetil, which basically will act on the DNA and prevent the transcription of the inflammatory cytokines, IL-1, IL-6 and TNF-alpha. It acts on the DNA and prevents transcription of the inflammatory cytokines, thus inhibiting the inflammation. And the second one that you can give is rituximab. Rituximab will suppress the T cells, it will suppress the B cells, it suppresses the macrophages, but it stimulates the T regulatory cells. These T regulatory cells release anti-inflammatory cytokines, IL-10. It releases anti-inflammatory cytokines and suppresses the inflammation. So for a long-term prevention of transverse myelitis, you would give rituximab or mycophenolate mofetil. So that's about the treatment of transverse myelitis.
So, transverse myelitis is the inflammation, demyelination of the axons in the spinal cord because of post-infectious reasons or associated with other autoimmune diseases or idiopathic. These are the pathophysiology. It's not clearly understood, but it's assumed to be because of molecular mimicry. The most common site to be involved is the thoracic spinal cord. The other sites can also be involved, but they are pretty much less common. It can lead to loss of dorsal column sensations, can lead to loss of corticospinal tract sensations and weakness. It can lead to decrease in the lateral and the anterior spinothalamic tract sensations, and the spinocerebellar tract sensations. And if the anterior horn cell gets affected, it can lead to lower motor neuron lesions. When the sympathetic nervous system gets affected, it can also lead to urinary and fecal incontinence. How do you diagnose it? You're going to diagnose it on the basis of a MRI of the spinal cord, which is black or hypo-intense in case of T1 and hyper-intense lesion in case of T2. How would you treat it? An acute phase will be treated with high-dose corticosteroids. And if high-dose corticosteroids don't work, you would like to do plasmapheresis. And for prevention, you would like to use immunosuppressants like mycophenolate mofetil and rituximab. If you found this video to be helpful, kindly like, share, comment and subscribe to my channel. Do let me know what other videos you would like to see. Thank you.